Hey guys, it's Matt Zaddy here from the Guitar Shop with some tips and tricks on learning heavy metal songs and metal in general.
What do you know about metal?
Well, a little bit. Just a little.
That is the most metal thing I ever heard in my whole life.
The Guitar Shop with Matt Zaddy. So I was chatting with the guys at the Guitar Shop about what video we were going to do next, and there was this idea about tips and tricks for learning songs. So I figured, why not make it genre specific? So for any of you who've seen me play in these vids before, you've probably seen me playing like some acoustic kind of folky, rhythm and bluesy sort of stuff. And I'm definitely going to do some more videos like that, but I figured, why not show you something that you haven't seen me do before? Metal. And if the first clip didn't do it for you, here's one more. For about 10 years, I played in a tech death metal band called Starring Janet Leigh. Yep, tech death metal. And it's a really challenging style of music, which was a lot of fun to play. I got to tour all around Canada and North America, and I made some of the best friends I've ever had, and it made me into a way better guitar player than I was at the time. Plus, that's how I cut my teeth in the music industry. And although these days I tend to teach metal a lot more than I do play it live, I figured I could give you guys a cool video which would give you some great tips and tricks on how to make the most of learning this genre. So here goes! So metal, or heavy metal, or whatever subgenre of metal you're listening to these days, cyber grind is normally a good mix of technical precision, creativity, attitude, and aggression. Kind of like being hit in the face at a very specific angle. Or a whole lot of ah! From the outsider listening to it, it can just seem like a whole bunch of noise, but it really is a world unto itself, and one that I spent about 10 years of my life really heavily immersed in. And man, is it a lot of fun. So here are some of my best tips for learning heavy metal.
We salute you, our half-inflated Dark Lord.
Whoa. So metal in general has a lot of different subgenres that tend to lean into one technique or another stylistically. So I'm going to keep this pretty broad as far as metal in general. So if I don't hit your specific subgenres technique, well, okay. Tech, gore, math, grind, electro, doom, core? Now some of these things are very genre specific, but a lot of them are universally applicable to playing in general. The first thing we're going to cover is some popular heavy metal guitar techniques. And right off the bat, I have to tell you, the majority of it is in your hands, or your head, communicating to your hands. Go. Yes, having great gear can make your sound better, but if you don't have the hands for it, or the chops, and you haven't worked it out, it's not really going to make that much of a difference. You don't buy a Lamborghini for your first car the same way that you don't buy an Angle for your first amp. Speaking of which, I miss my Angle. Aw. Technique is key, and guess where that lies? Like I said, in here, in here. You want to make sure that you've got a great understanding of what you're doing, that you know exactly what you need to be able to play in order to do the genre well. Good gear will definitely help you shape your sound into something that's very much your own, but if you don't have the chops and you don't know the music, it really doesn't matter. Randy Rhoads auditioned for Ozzy's band with a practice amp and got the gig because he could play. So, yeah. With that being said, obviously there are some gear decisions that you do have to think about, like if you're playing songs by a band that uses 7-string or 8-string guitars, it might be handy to have those things if you're trying to play songs with them. Either that or you're massively detuning your guitar and so on and so forth. You should probably also have an amp that has some gain, distortion, or overdrive, because you kind of need a sound like that for metal. It's not all clean and pretty. Just saying. It's not da 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 da. It's more like jun 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 jun. Da 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 da. A lot of the technique you use in metal are kind of like amped up blues and rock techniques. Obviously, there's going to be string bends, hammer-ons and pull-offs, vibrato, alternate picking, taking many of these ideas to new and wonderful extremes.
What about doom metal?
Sure, here you go. No problem. Just down, pick away. Now, you probably expected all of those things to be here, of course, but you probably didn't think about how important muting is. Metal's usually played with a lot of gain and distortion, and without proper muting, you're not likely to get the sound that you want, and you're going to get all kinds of background noise that's going to interfere with what you're actually trying to play. Even just taking your hands off the strings, you're going to get all kinds of noise. I didn't do it. It's essentially a mix of using both hands to keep the strings muted so that you only hear the sounds that you actually want people to hear, not all the background stuff that comes with it. Of course, this isn't exclusive to metal, but with the type of sounds you're typically creating, you want to make sure that people are hearing the sounds you want them to hear, not the sounds you don't. Speaking of muting, there's also palm muting, which is pretty crucial in metal. For palm muting, you're essentially using the fleshy part of your hand here to mute the string slightly to give it that sort of chuggy, jun-jun kind of sound. Sometimes it could be on higher strings or lower strings, in chords or individual notes, but it's everywhere in the genre, so it's an essential element of playing metal. I remember I used to go to this sushi restaurant a lot in Toronto on College Street called Jun Jun's, and every time I'd walk in there, I'd go, Jun-jun, Jun-jun. Nah, I thought it was funny. Ha ha! Picking styles in metal also vary based on what you need for the sound you're trying to create. Down picking and alternate picking come in various forms. Usually for down picking, it'll either be a slower part or like a chuggy part, and then for the alternate picking, it could be solos or fast chords. It's all over the place in the genre, and you're going to have to be able to do it at pretty high tempos.
What about economy picking or pinch harmonics?
Then there's economy picking and pinch harmonics and lots of other techniques, but we can only cover so much. Like I said, broad strokes in this vid. You can't fit everything in this video. I don't want this video to be an hour long. Thanks. But we will cover one other picking technique because you cannot do without this in metal. Tremolo picking. Tremolo picking is another example where it's not something that's specific to metal, like mandolins will do it, or even acoustic guitars, but it is an essential component of playing modern metal, so yeah, get working on that there, kids. For those of you who don't know what tremolo picking is, it's essentially alternate picking of a single note at high speeds, and it creates this resonant, cool kind of sound. Younger me thought that tremolo picking was just playing really, really fast, and didn't think at the time about, exactly how many times I was picking. I was just trying to go as fast as I could, failing to realize there were very specific subdivisions that were going on.
Freaking idiot.
It seems ridiculous, right? Well, maybe not. There are some things in music that might seem obvious to one person, but until somebody else points it out, you might miss it. So this was one of my things that early in my playing, I very much missed. Typically, tremolo is going to be in either triplets or 16th notes or sextuplets or 30-second notes, a lot of it depending on the tempo of the tune, the feel that you're going for, but I don't know, I love the sound. I love the sound of tremolo picking, I just love it. The important thing to remember is to be very specific about it. If you're doing triplets, do triplets. If you're doing 16th notes, do 16th notes. It should be consistent all the way through, unless you're trying to make it sound bad. Or you're trying to... It's not only a matter of starting and ending on the correct beat, you want to make sure that your tempo is consistent all the way through to create that feel. You don't want it speeding up and then slowing down and speeding up and slowing down. It just makes for bad sounding tremolo picking. Your best bet is to start slow with alternate picking, either working with 8th notes or 16th notes, so 2 to a beat or 4 to a beat, and get comfortable doing that consistently with a metronome, so dun 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 or da 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 da. It's a good idea to keep track of your tempos as well. And you should also be thinking about it if you're working on a song with tremolo picking. Is it staying on one string or is it moving to another string? Because when you're doing alternate picking, if it's 16th notes or triplets, changing strings when you have to pick in different directions can cause all kinds of problems. So you want to be prepared for that when you have to use it. You're going to find there is a little bit of an endurance factor to this. Getting used to the idea of doing a consistent pick at a fast speed takes work, so be prepared for that. Tremolo picking on different strings or on different parts of the neck can also change how it feels based on the tension of the string, if you're playing high up in the upper register or if you're playing low down on your lowest string. So you want to be prepared for that when you're thinking about how you're going to learn it. You might also find that different pick widths will be easier for some people than others. Again, this is just an experimentation thing. Like anything else in your playing, some people like thick picks and some people like thin picks, but there will be a minimum thickness you're going to need to be able to pull off this kind of stuff. So something to think about. I usually end up using a medium or heavier gauge pick just because I find it gives me the ability to be able to do the tremolo or the individual string picking stuff, but also the strumming through stuff. Genre specific, sure. Typically, you're going to see this kind of picking in a lot of death metal or black metal, but there's all kinds of like mainstream metal bands that are doing tremolo picking as well, so it is an essential skill set to have. So when I was younger, I used to hang out on this message board called the Brave Board, and there was always this list that kept popping up about how to be black metal. Top 100 ways to be black metal. At least 5 of them were always don't be Danny Filth, and be necro, and grim, and true.
Stay tuned for part 2, and be sure to like and subscribe. Now.
Let's dance!